So we will be learning one more method for solving quadratics tomorrow, which is nice. It's the quadratic formula. It's just a formula. If you memorize the formula, it works all the time. As long as you learn how to simplify it correctly, which is what we'll work on. You will want a calculator because I'm going to use your calculator to do it. A big portion of it. The portion that people get wrong all the time, we're going to do in our calculator. All right. So completing the square works all the time, but to solve for x or b or whatever variable you've got. But we have today one more step that we had to add on. And today we're going to add on step number 0. Step number 0 is divide through by a. If there is a number in front of your x squared term, then you're going to need to get rid of it. So we have to divide through by a first. We cannot complete the square when there's a number in front of the squared term. Okay, so it's one simple step. We're going to just do it first. And then everything else is the same as yesterday. So hopefully you can finish up your worksheet today. This does need to be turned in before you leave. And then tomorrow we'll start and do quadratic formula real fast. And you can then review, which I'll pass out the review tomorrow as well. So we're going to do a couple. Example 1, solve by completing the square. Example 1, solve by completing the square. And example 1, solve by completing the square. All right, here we go. So we have 4x squared plus 24x minus 8 equals 0. You'll notice we've got a number in front of the x squared. That is our step number 0. Divide through by a. Whatever is in front of that x squared cannot be there, so we're going to divide every single term by that number. Now, sometimes that's going to create some fractions. Not 24. What is 24x divided by 4? 6x. There we go. And negative 8 divided by 4, negative 2. And 0 divided by any number is 0. Okay. And so then, from yesterday, what was step number 1?
Step number 1 was isolate x and x term.
The x squared and x term. Very good. Isolate the x squared and x term. So just like yesterday, we want our x squared and our x term together, which means I need to move this away by doing what? Adding 2. So that's a step you can really simplify. Just add 2 to the other side. Move it over, change the sign. And then, what was step number 2? Add C to both sides. So I'm going to do that. This time, I'm just going to add a blank space. And I'm going to fill in the blank with my C value. So C equals, how do we figure out C? Half of 6 squared. Half of 6 squared. Half of 6 is 3. And 3 squared is 9. So we're going to add 9 to both sides. Okay? Then, what's the third step? Factor the trinomial. Factor that trinomial. So this left-hand side is going to factor. How does x squared plus 6x plus 9 double bubble? X plus 3 and x plus 3, or x plus 3 quantity squared. And you can skip that if you want to, do the little placeholder with factoring, you can, or you can jump right to here. All right, and then we also can combine here. 2 plus 9 gives me 11. All right, and what is my fourth and final step here? Solve by taking a plus or minus the square root. Solve using the square root method. So we're going to take a square root of both sides. Don't forget the plus or minus, super important. The square root and the square cancel out, leaving x plus 3 equals plus or minus. Can I simplify the square root of 11? No, you cannot. There's no perfect squares in there. So we leave it radical 11. And how do we get x by itself? Subtract 3. So we get x equals negative 3 plus or minus radical 11. This is the work that I show when I'm completing the square. Okay? Do you have any questions on the first one? Okay. All right, letter B. 3x squared plus 12x minus 9 equals 0. What do you need to do first?
Divide by 2.
Oh, okay. No.
Yeah, I'm gonna use it.
Okay. All right, Allison,
If not,
an email, I guess.
if not, just use the other one. How long you guys?
Okay, thank you. All right. Oh, we're recording. How funny, forgot. All right, we're gonna divide by 3. La-di-da. Okay. X squared plus, what is 12 over 3x? 4, yeah. Minus, what's 9 over 3? 3 equals 0. And then what do we need to do? Move the 3 away. So we're going to move that 3 by adding it to the other side. So we get x squared plus 4x equals positive 3. And then I need to add some blank spaces. What goes in the blank space? C, whatever C is. How do we figure out C? It is for half of 4 quantity squared. Half of 4 is 2, and 2 squared gives me 4. So we're putting 4 in both of those blank spaces, which then this left-hand side can double bubble. How does it double bubble? X plus 2 times x plus 2, or x plus 2 quantity squared is equal to 7. 3 plus 4 gives me 7. And then I can solve by taking the square root of both sides. Square root, square root. Don't forget the plus or minus. So I get x plus 2 equals plus or minus radical 7. I can't fix radical 7 at all. And then how do you get x by itself? Subtract the 2. So x equals negative 2 plus or minus radical 7. Are you okay with me drawing arrows like this to say, go over here? Yeah?
Looks nice.
As long as you change the sign, you're allowed to do that. Okay? Go over here. Just become negative. or opposite. Become the opposite. All right. All right, one more. Let's just do C. We're going to do C because a lot of the problems today are in a crazy order. So we have 4x squared plus 1 equals 6x. Again, crazy order, right? So we need to rearrange. But before we rearrange, what do you want to do? Yeah, it's got a number in front of the x squared. What do we need to do? Divide everything by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1x squared. Plus 1 divided by 4? 1/4. What's 6x divided by 4? 3/2. Very good. It's a fraction. You will get fractions. They just reduce. 6 and 4 both divide by 2. So that's going to be 3/2x. Now, this is a crazy order. The second step said I need my x squared and my x term on the same side. I need them isolated together. So I need to move them over. I also don't care about this 1/4, so I'm going to move him to the right side. So I have x squared. How do I move the 3/2 x? Subtract it. So I have negative 3/2 x. And again, how do I move the 1/4? Subtract it. So it becomes negative 1/4. I'm going to go ahead and add some blank spaces. How do you figure out what C is? Half of, negative 3/2 quantity squared. How do you multiply fractions? Straight across. 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. 2 times 2 is 4. And we square that. What's negative 3/4 times negative 3/4? 9/16. Very good. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. 4 times 4 is 16. So there is our C value, 9/16. You will create some fractions today, ladies and gentlemen, but that's what calculators are for. On the left, we can double bubble. X times x is x squared. What times what is 9/16? Whatever is here being squared is the answer. Negative 3/4 times negative 3/4 would give us positive 9/16. X minus 3/4 quantity squared. Now, on the right side, I've got crazy fraction madness here. Negative 1/4 plus 9/16. I'm going to just type into my calculator, get a crazy decimal, and then what am I going to do? Math bracket. All right, don't spend time trying to figure out fractions if it's hard for you. Math bracket, so I'm going to math frac it, and I get 5, there it is, 5/16. 5/16. Make sure you know how to do that on your calculator, okay? All of you should have calculators able to do that. How do I get rid of the square? How do I solve? Square root, yes. Both sides, don't forget the plus or minus. Square root and square cancel out. So I get x minus 3/4 equals plus or minus. How do I deal with this giant radical? Split them up. So it becomes radical 5 over radical 16. What's the square root of 5? I don't know. It's the square root of 5. 5 is prime. It doesn't have any perfect squares in there. But what's the square root of 16? 4. Square root of 16 is 4. And then how do I get x by itself? Add 3/4. Add 3/4. That becomes positive 3/4 plus or minus radical 5/4. Okay, you have any questions? All right, you finished that worksheet from yesterday? the back side. The first two, 11 and 12, or 12, 13 and 14, 13 and 14, I think, you do not have to divide, but all the rest you do, okay? The first two are just like yesterday's.